Most leadership teams think they know exactly what their board wants to hear about AI. They spend weeks preparing these extensive slide decks, they pull all the latest adoption metrics, and they build out these beautiful roadmaps with very confident timelines. Then they walk into that boardroom and they realize the board is asking a completely different set of questions.
This disconnect, it's costing organizations a lot more than they realize. See, it's not the AI gap that everyone's always talking about, it's what we call the conversation gap. It's the gap between the presentation you've built and the actual conversation the board needs to have.
So in this explainer, we're going to break down the 5 key questions that pretty much every board is asking about AI right now. We'll look at why the usual answers tend to fall short, and most importantly, what genuine preparation really looks like.
Okay, let's start by properly defining the core problem we're going to be addressing today, this really critical AI conversation gap.
It is absolutely crucial to remember that boards are first and foremost risk management bodies. That's their primary function. So before they can ever really hear the opportunity story that you're so excited to tell, they have to understand the risk story. And that is the fundamental source of this whole disconnect.
So let's see how this risk-first mindset shapes the specific questions that we're seeing pop up in every single sector and at every level of AI maturity.
The very first question is almost always about exposure. Are we exposed to regulatory action? What about reputational damage if an AI system harms a customer? Or are we exposed competitively because we're just moving too slowly? You see, boards think in terms of downside before they think about upside. A presentation that leads with all the great opportunities before addressing exposure is going to lose the room right away.
Okay, question 2. Who is accountable? And notice the wording here. It's not who owns the technology, but who is accountable for the outcomes that the AI produces. This trips up more leadership teams than any other question. In most companies, accountability is just diffuse. It's kind of split between the tech teams, legal, the business unit. Boards have seen this movie before, and they will not accept that as a governance model for something as powerful as AI.
The third question gets at performance over time, not just how it did at launch. Most AI reporting shows these great pilot results or initial adoption rates. Boards, though, they want to know if the system is still performing as it should 6 months down the road, or if anyone even noticed when its performance started to drift.
And this leads right into the competitive question. Board members benchmark your company informally through their own networks. They talk to other directors on other boards. So if your organization is behind on a key capability, chances are they might already know. The real question is, are you the person who informs them of the plan, or are you the person who gets told what to do?
And finally, we have the newest question on the block. What does good governance actually look like? Boards want to see evidence, not just a policy document, not a vague reference to some framework. They want specific operational evidence that your governance is real and that it's functioning, not just something that's aspirational and written down somewhere.
All right, so we've seen the questions. Now let's dig into why the typical answers so often fail to land.
This slide really gets to the heart of the problem. Your presentation might be showing shiny adoption rates and great efficiency metrics, but a board member who sat on a risk committee for a decade, they hear something different. They hear, "Tell me what you are not going to tell me voluntarily." A director who's seen tech projects go off the rails before hears, "These numbers look exactly like every set of numbers I've seen right before a project runs into trouble."
You see, the mismatch isn't about intelligence, it's about orientation. The function leader is naturally oriented toward the initiative. Their job is to make it succeed. But the board member, they're oriented toward the organization as a whole. Closing that gap requires preparing for the conversation the board is actually having, not just delivering the presentation you built.
So, what does it look like to walk into that room genuinely prepared? Well, it means bringing 5 specific governance artifacts with you. First, a risk register, not a risk slide. A slide that just says key risks include data quality tells the board nothing. A real risk register names the specific risks, it rates each one by likelihood and impact, it identifies the control that's in place, and it names the person who is accountable. It shows that risk is being actively managed, not just acknowledged.
Second, a clear accountability map. It should be 1 page. Every single AI system you have in production. For each one, you list the function owner, the technical owner, and the risk owner. No ambiguity whatsoever. And let's be honest, if you can't produce that single page, then you have your answer for why the board keeps asking that accountability question.
Third, you need to show a performance trend. A board wants to see if the system is still performing months down the line. And here's the really counterintuitive part.
Showing an amber result, an okay result, and being honest about it does more for your credibility than showing two perfect green ones. It tells the board you're watching, that you're being honest, and that you have a plan. That is what a prepared leader looks like.
Fourth, bring an external reference point. We already said it, boards benchmark informally all the time. You should be benchmarking formally and bringing that comparison to them. This demonstrates that you are watching the same competitive landscape that they are. It puts you on the same page.
And fifth, and this might be the most important, have a specific ask. Board conversations that end without a clear request, they don't produce any decisions. You need to know exactly what you're asking for: a budget, a policy decision, and mandate to expand a pilot. Knowing your ask is the final, crucial piece of genuine preparation.
Now, all of this leads to a really powerful strategic reframe about the real role of governance in AI adoption.
There's this persistent misunderstanding that governance is just a brake on progress. But the opposite is actually true. Governance does not slow AI adoption down. Ungoverned AI adoption is what slows adoption down, because ungoverned systems are the ones that produce the failures that cause boards to withdraw trust and pause initiatives. Ultimately, governance is the very thing that makes AI adoption sustainable. It's the difference between a pilot that gets approved and a capability that actually gets scaled across the entire organization.
Leaders who truly understand this walk into their board conversations not as advocates for a cool piece of technology, but as architects of a governed capability. And those are the ones who keep getting their investments approved, because they are building something the board can actually trust.
So before your next conversation with a senior stakeholder, take a moment and write down your answers to these 5 questions. Not the answer you'd put on a polished slide, the honest, direct answer you would give if a board member asked you face to face. The gaps in that little exercise, that is your preparation agenda.